All right, morning everybody. Why, Benny? So British of you. Wasn't proper. Morning, Erica. Morning, Lucas. Benny's not rich enough for the little Lindors. Okay, Lindor is like a slight step down from the Ferrero Rocher, though. Lindor is like middle class. Ferrero Rocher is upper class. And then Cadbury chocolate eggs are both lower class and upper class because they're the most delicious thing ever. Morning, Shady. Morning, Owen. Morning, Ruth. Eat well. Is there better kinds of Lindor, Owen? There's an... Okay, well, first of all, no outlet mall is going to work. But... That's cool that there is one in the outlet mall. I didn't know that. All right, let's mark who is here and who is not. Benjamin, that is so kind. When in the sunlight, but no other time. Okay, let's do this attendance. Sorry for being weird. We're at 7:58. Let's see. Benny, Erica, Owen, Sadie, Ruth, Kathleen. Yuli, Kendra, Sam, SJ. Did I miss anyone? Oh, Lucas. Always confuses me. All right, so let's see here then. 8 o'clock, missing a couple people. Zion is here now. Good, awesome. Zion's there, sweet. And Jared's here, perfect. So I seem to be missing Teddy, Crystal, Katrin, Maddie, Larissa, but I feel like I saw Erica, didn't I? Sorry, Erica. Yeah, I don't know. I thought I clicked you already. So Katrin, Maddie, Teddy, Crystal. Let's just see. Teddy's here. Awesome. Did I miss one of those guys? I don't think so. No. All right, so if Crystal, Katrin, Maddie show up, let me know. That'd be lovely. Hey, Crystal. Awesome. Okay. Share that sucker. All right, team. So plan for today is we are going to actually go through the test. And so if you look in your OneNotes right now, you should be able to see in tests, there was a point in time, and some of you panicked and you sent me a message like, my test is gone, because I just took them. That way I could mark them and get them done in my own folder before I put them back in yours. So they're back in yours now, so you should be able to go into your test folder. It no longer has a password. No need. You already know it, right? Everyone knows it. So you can log back in there. And you'll be able to see that. Our goal today is we're going to take up that test, okay? And we're actually going to spend the entire period on that. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to spend, the full hour 20 with me talking, answering questions, and maybe that's how it has to be. But I'm going to go through the test, and I'm going to explain the questions, especially that I thought people struggled with, and explain why. And what I want you guys to do is I want you to be going through there and correcting things. Actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a little bit of a bonus if you fully corrected all of your work. Okay, so if I can go back through my OneNote or your OneNote specifically, and I correct, or I see that you've corrected all the questions that you've got wrong, I'm going to bump your mark a little bit. So that's the goal for today, is that you would follow along with me, you correct the ones you got wrong, and then so on, and ask questions about the ones that you didn't understand or still don't at the end there. If we get done really early, I might give us a couple practice questions, but I think for the most part, I'm hoping that this can be used as a period to wrap up everything about lines. We're moving on from lines starting tomorrow. So any questions that you might have about lines from the test, from earlier, from before, we can answer all of those, and you'll be comfortable with lines moving forward, because it's an important, probably one of the most important things from grade 9. Like, we're going to go into trigonometry, and you do a little bit of trigonometry and whatnot all the way up to grade 12, obviously, and different sorts of trigonometry means like triangles and stuff, and different shapes. But lines and that solving equations is the most important skill you'll have, because you'll use it more than anything else. So this stuff is definitely important. I saw some of you that maybe like struggled with other units and did really, really well this unit, and some people that did well other units didn't do as well this unit. So a bit of a tipsy-turny. I don't know the right words, but flip-flop on the differences there. So anyways, if you could take that out, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go through that together, and we'll rock and roll. So it should be in your tests. Can anyone type in chat and see if I didn't distribute their test? It's likely that you just didn't sync it, but I was copying and pasting them back in to make sure I don't send everyone's test. Or I hope it didn't happen, but just in case I maybe gave you the wrong test, I was pretty careful when I was doing this to make sure that wouldn't happen, but I know I make mistakes for sure. So send me a message in the chat if I did not send you your test, or if I sent you the wrong test. Hey, Maddie. All right, so Maddie's here. Just missing Katrin by the look of things. Sorry, I've misplaced the chat. There it is. Okay, we're good. Seems like everyone's got their test then. All right, so let me just go to the right page. Make sure we are all good with that. So for you guys, what I would do is I would recommend you take out another colored pen from OneNote to correct it beside it, or if you want, you can copy and paste your test, right? Copy and paste it, erase what questions that were like a total gong show, the ones you got wrong, and just correct them on here. And maybe put a star beside them, because remember, this is important, not just for the boosted mark that I'm going to give you for doing this, but also for studying for your exam. So definitely a huge concept there to get these suckers marked. Let's go up and switch this sucker to, there we go. Awesome. Yeah, so let's just motor. Let's motor through here. Oops. Oh man, where's my mouse? All right. Okay, so we're going to go through some of these. I think for the most part, some of these earlier ones you guys did pretty well. Yeah, sorry, Kathleen. Hopefully that's a bit better here. I'll make me smaller too today for sure. I don't know that I'm totally necessary. I can also take me away completely. Maybe I'll just take me away completely. There we go. Okay, so looking at this then, sorry. We're looking for the solution to x divided by 4 equals 10. Now, I will go through pretty well all of these because there was basically a mistake in every single one. So I have the right answers here, but I'm just going to explain each step and how we get there. So remember with YouTube, this is a live stream, but I'm really just taking up the tests, and at the end of this, I might throw out, if we get done really early, some other little practice things that could get you started for the next unit. But basically, you can feel free to pause and don't stress because we're just going through the test. So pause when you need me to slow down or when you need to correct your work, and play when you are caught up and ready to move on. So state the solution. Well, this one here, right, I see that I want to get, basically solution means get x by itself. X by itself. So I really want to get rid of this x divided by 4. What's the opposite of dividing by 4? It would be multiplying by 4. So we're going to have x just by itself is equal to 10. And then on the other side, we're taking them over and we would multiply by 4. So x is equal to 40. As we take this and move that across, right, we want to add 9 to both sides, add 9, add 9. And that would take rid of that, so it would be x is equal to 6 plus 9 is 15. And I can write that out in several steps. Oops. 9 plus 6, so x equals to 15. Okay, so for C, it looks like Kendra is saying that I made a mistake. Again, anyways, guys, maybe keep those as private messages and stuff like that you can get me to later. And we do remember my rule that's if you need some sort of mark change, you message me the next day. Okay, so to solve the equation, this guy, the first step would be to divide each side. No, it's okay, Kendra. It's all good. It's kind of a weird rule right now in these times anyways. But again, sorry that I marked that wrong. So basically, in this stage here, I'm going to write this over on the right-hand side. So negative 6r equals 2r plus 3. Okay, so if you were to divide everything by negative 6 here, which it says the first step would be divide each side by negative 6. Well, what that would do is that would leave you with, right, I'd get rid of this negative 6, and then I'd have to divide this by negative 6, and this by negative 6, and basically I'm going to get like r equals, well, 2 over negative 6, and you'd have to like reduce that, and that'd be really ugly, plus, okay, 3 over negative 6 is negative a half or whatever, and basically you're going to get this nasty mess, right? Let's just pretend that's negative a half, and this would be negative a third, but I still have an r on this side and an r on this side, and I have this ugly fraction. And two fractions. So it's like so much work and doesn't really make sense for me to divide them all by 6. Now technically, you're not doing anything completely wrong, but you're making more work for yourself, which doesn't make sense, right? We know that the first step that we follow in class, and the first step you should follow to make your life easier, is to collect like terms. So I see, I'm going to rewrite this, negative 6r equals 2r plus 3. Remember our rule was take the equal sign and just move all of your r's to the same side, right? Move that r across, so you'd get, right, you'd get your negative 6 r minus 2r equals 3, and then you get, right, that's minus 8r equals 3, and then you just have to divide by 8. Sorry, this red pen is way too thick. But anyways, that's a much faster and more efficient step. If you were to do that and you divided everything by 6, there'd just be like a lot of adding fractions, and you'd still have to move the r's across. You're just causing yourself more work, right? In that other stage, even though we had like 1r and then this ugly fraction, you still had to move things across. If you followed your rules right, you would have got the same answer, but kind of a waste of your time. So it should be false. So D said state the equation of a linear equation written in slope y-intercept form. Well, slope y-intercept form is when we have the slope and the y-intercept like very obvious. So y equals mx plus b. So you didn't have to write y equals mx plus b. It said write the basically any equation, right? So y equals 2x plus 1, or y equals 3x minus 4. Basically any of those ones, even if you just wrote the general equation, I was happy with that. Awesome. All right, Lewis, so we're going through and we're taking up the answers here, and basically we're just saying that we want you to correct all of your questions, and if you do correct your work and I go through your OneNote and I see that it's all corrected and everything's happy, you have something that's actually useful to look back on, I'm going to give you a bump in your mark. So state the equation for part E written in standard form. So basically, really standard form is a bit weird. You could have wrote ax plus by plus c equals 0, or you could have wrote the c on the other side of the equal sign. It doesn't really matter. But basically anything where you've had 2x plus 3y equals 6, or x plus y minus 6 equals, I don't know, anything like that. Obviously, those are different equations, guys. I'm just giving you different things all through there. Okay, so for F, it says, is the point 4, 5 on the line? And the way to check that, right, is to see if the equation is equal. Remember, this is like x comma y. So if your x is 4 and your y is 5, does this make sense? So 5 is y, 4 is x, plus 1. Hey, makes sense, right? And everything's equal. We'd get 5 equals 5, so it has to be true. It wouldn't be true if you had something like 4, 6, where you put in 4 is equal to 5 over here and it's 6 on the other side. That doesn't make sense, right? So you're looking for what makes that true. For part G says two lines have slope 2 and -0.5. Are these lines perpendicular? Perpendicular, remember, means that 90-degree angle. And so it's true if they are reciprocals. I saw some people use different words in their test, but reciprocal is the one we're looking for, which basically means flip. And then they're also the opposite sign, right? One's positive and one's negative. So we have a 2 and a -0.5. So that would mean that, yes, they are perpendicular because they are the opposite sign. One's positive, one's negative, and they are also reciprocals. Okay, so if we're looking here, we're looking for an equation of a line that is parallel to 5x plus 1. So remember, parallel is all about the slope here. So we're looking at it having the exact same slope. Parallel means same slope. So I would see over here, when we're talking y equals mx plus b, that will be the same, right? And then it says it has a y-intercept of 9. And remember, in our equation, if I'm writing this as like y equals mx plus b, we know the slope already. But in order to get our b, that's our y-intercept. So b is equal to 9. Sorry, a bit of a voice crack there. Okay. So I is very similar to the questions that many of us were not so great at further below. So we're gonna look at that. Seems like everyone knew what they were like supposed to do, but struggled with actually doing it. It's basically the same thing as we have been doing. It's just like with letters instead of numbers. So isolate for R means get R by itself, right? Get R by itself, or solve for R. Basically, get R by itself. So what I'm trying to do is get R equals. So if I want to get R by itself here, I see right now it's basically tied up with this I, right? And when things are written beside each other, that's really the same thing as multiplication. So it's not a very good multiplication symbol. I could use the dot there. So those things are multiplied. So remember, to get rid of that I want to divide I on both sides. That's how I kick that guy off. So I'll just be left with R over here. And I want to divide both sides by I in order to get rid of this I, so we're just left with R. So I would just take my V and divide it by I on the other side. And then I have R by itself. And I think most people did pretty well with this. Remember, it's X, Y. I think a couple people messed up. They just switched them up, right? But where do they intersect? Okay, X, comma, Y, 1, 3, right there. Any questions so far about any of those multiple choice you want me to repeat or possibly go through again? If not, I'll keep going, because I know your time is valuable. Okay, so a lot of people did really well here. You know, some people obviously struggle with a couple of them. I think the last two are maybe a bit harder. But for the most part, you guys were pretty good going through here. Normally, it was just, we just did some weird rules. So if you made a mistake on a question, see if you did something that really doesn't make sense, and maybe you can ask me about it, like, why doesn't this work specifically? But there were so many little rules that you guys were making up, or because we're solving. Remember, when we're solving, you always follow. Solving is SAMDEB. So a lot of us were not following SAMDEB. We were doing, you know, our division before we were doing any subtraction, or, you know, weird things like that. And we weren't dealing with the brackets last. We were sometimes dealing with the brackets first. And I'll show you what I mean by that, because there's actually probably, oh yeah, there is some brackets in there. Yeah. So good. I'll explain that in a second. Morning, Lenice. All right, so for 3x plus 5 equals 20, remember, in terms of SAMDEB, we want to do our addition and subtraction first here. So I want to get rid of, right, I want to make sure I'm dealing with SA first, subtraction, addition, and I see here there was a 3x plus 5, so I want to get rid of that plus 5 first. So how do I do that? I subtract 5 from both sides, right? So that's where we get this minus 5. And then we see, okay, 20 minus 5 is 15, right? So really, this stage in between here, I'm sorry I didn't write out that middle step, but I would get 3x equals 15, right? Sorry, that's like that little middle step in there. Sorry if that looks a little bit confusing. And then I say I want to get rid of multiply by 3, right? Because now I look and I don't have any more subtraction or addition, so I can go to multiply and divide. So I look here, it's like, oh, this is multiply with the x, right? So what's the opposite of multiplying by 3? Dividing by 3. So 15 divided by 3 is just 5. So that should have been your answer in there. Remember, you can pause at any point. Pause and go back at any point. That's the great thing about YouTube. The not so great thing is it's blocked in China. Okay, so here, again, follow SAMDEB, right? So do your subtraction and addition first. So here, right, this, if we're looking at what's attached to the X right now, I see that there is a division. So when we're talking SAMDEB, division is all the way down here, right? So we don't want to do that one first. We want to do this addition first. So let's get rid of that. So instead of having it here, I'm going to subtract 3 on both sides, right? So if I subtract 3 over to this side, then I'm going to be left with x over 4, right? So this hasn't changed. I've just got rid of this plus 3, so it's on the other side. Sorry, my equal signs are not totally straight, are they? Then we're at minus 5, right? Minus 2 minus 3 is minus 5. And then as we look here, right, this is division. So what's the opposite of division? Multiplication. So we multiply both sides by 4. That means we're going to get x equals negative 5 times 4, right? Times 4. Negative 5 times 4 is negative 20. Look at this. I wrote SAMDEM. I don't know what I was doing there at SAMDEB. Okay, this one here, C is it was a bit tricky. It's one where you had to move all of your variables to one side, which means all of your x's to one side, and all of your constants or numbers to the other to get just x by itself. This is kind of like that question up there where it said, "What's the best step? Would it be to divide by 3 or in that?" First part was a 6, right? Well, no, that would be really confusing, right? If you divided everything by 3, there'd be a bunch of fractions and weird numbers, so you don't want that. What I'm going to do is I chose to bring my x's to the left side, and I chose to bring my numbers to the right side. So what does that mean then? Instead of having this as minus 2x, I add 2x to both sides. So I'm still got this 3x, right? I still have, sorry. And then I'm adding 2x to it. So we'd have this 3x, and as this negative comes across, it becomes positive 2x. And then over here, we were left with this positive 6 here. And as that minus 9 comes across, it becomes plus 9. So we'd have 3x and 2x is 5x, 6 and 9 is 15. And then you'd go ahead and you decide that you need to divide, right? So you divide both sides by 5. That would be our next stage here. This is multiply, opposite is divide. Divide both sides by 5, and I'm going to get x equals to 3. Again, pause if you need to. Or rewind, rewatch. D. All right, well, remember, the brackets are like kind of the last thing we deal with. But typically, right, what you want to do is you want to simplify then solve. So there's nothing else really here other than the brackets, right? We could do, this is technically multiplication, so this times this. You could divide both sides by 3, but you can't take this 1. I saw some people say, oh, see this 1 here? I'm just going to subtract 1 from both sides, and that'll be just, 3 times. No, you can't do that because it's inside the brackets, right? Brackets needs to be, if you're thinking about your addition, subtraction, all this stuff, SAMDEB. Technically, your brackets would go last. They're the last thing you deal with, unless you simplify, right? We do our little expansion here first, because this needs to be 3 times this and 3 times this in order for us to expand and move everything out. So you can see that I did that, but technically, if you follow the rules as well, you could just start SAMDEBing from here, and you could get rid of this multiplication here first. This is 3 times this. You could have divided both sides by 3, but Anyways, I chose to multiply it out first because that's what I taught you guys to do, to not have to deal with things that are maybe more complicated than this. You just simplify first and then you solve. So 3 times negative 2x is negative 6x, and 3 times 1 is 3. So if you move that 1 across, that was because you've broken the rules. Okay, so that would be why you've got this wrong here. I might have, if I saw something else that you followed some sort of rule in here, maybe given you a part mark or 1 mark, something like that. But sometimes you made a couple mistakes with rules that weren't rules, and I didn't like that. So anyways, the first thing I did was I simplified, right? I got rid of the brackets. I expanded the brackets. And then I move my 3 across, so I'm going to follow SAMDEB, right? Subtraction and addition now, right? After I've simplified, I've got rid of that. Now I solve. Now I do SAMDEB. So I take my 3 and I subtract it. I bring it across. So I'm going to be left with 30. And then I've got this negative 6 here, and remember that's negative 6 times x. So I'm going to do divided by negative 6. So it'd be 30 divided by this negative 6 here. So that's just negative 5. So first, expand the brackets, then we've got this. Then you want to use your solving skills, so SAMDEB, and you first deal with the subtraction addition. So I'm going to get rid of this positive 3. It'll become, right, subtract 3 from both sides, subtract 3 from this side. We're left with 30 and just negative 6x here. And then you want to divide the negative 6 because we've already done our subtraction or addition. Now we've got multiplication, division. So I'm going to divide that negative 6 and deal with that. Checking my Teams messages that there wasn't anything that I need to deal with right away. No. Okay. So this one here. A couple different things you could do again, but the big thing is, if you see that this is divided by 6, that means technically that whole thing is divided by 6, right? A lot of you just treated that divided by 6. You treated it entirely different because you brought this 1 across first. And you didn't treat it as, well, technically this is, 2x divided by 6 minus 1 divided by 6. Like both of these things are divided by 6. And so you just brought this like negative 1 across and then dealt with this and did all that nastiness afterwards. And that really, you broke some rules in doing that one there. Oh, sorry, this isn't erasing anymore. So you need to kind of think this is the whole thing being divided. And sure, you could do this divided by this and this divided by this. You can't just take this negative 1 out of the numerator of a fraction and be like, oh, that's just plus 1 and plus 1 and that is perfect. You can't do that. So what you do need to think about this as almost is like this is dividing the whole thing. It's the whole 2x minus 1. Brackets aren't like an actual part of anything. They're just kind of like an organization tool. So I would say that you could have thought about this with brackets, and that might have helped your kind of brain, because really this is 2x minus 1, the whole thing, divided by 6. It's like if I said this 2x minus 1 needs to be multiplied by 3, right? If I want that whole thing times 3, I don't write it like this. That's just 3 times 2x. But if I write it by 3 times 2x, it's the whole thing, right? So we want to deal with that last. You want to get rid of this 6 up into here. And so what's the opposite of dividing by 6? The opposite of dividing is multiplying. So I want to multiply both sides by 6. Multiply by 6. Multiply by 6. And that would take rid of those, or get rid of those, sorry. So we're just left with your 2x minus 1 on the left. And on the right side, you get negative 1 times 6, which is negative 6. So I brought that up. You could have also dealt with it as 2 separate fractions, like we talked about. But anyways, that would be, that'd be nasty. It'd be nasty. You'd have to get your common denominator, all that sort of stuff. You'd still get the right answer if you followed the steps right. You just can't cheat by pulling this 1 out. The other thing I saw, I don't know where this came from, but some of you just flipped it. You were just like, actually, I'd rather this. And I didn't understand that. And then, I don't know, there's some other weird rules in there too, all of which are not things we learned. So you just kind of made stuff up as you went, but make sure that you're not doing that and you are just simply following the rules we do know, so you don't get stuck, right? Even if you're doing it slightly different than me, as long as you follow the rules, then you'll get the right answer. So here we go. Now that I'm left with 2x minus 1 equals 6, again, I'm going to follow my SAMDEB, right? So I have to get rid of that minus 1, so I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So when I do that, I'm going to have negative 6 plus 1, which is just negative 5. So I have 2x equals negative 5. Opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I have x equals negative 5 divided by 2, which is negative 2.5. I know some of you wrote it in decimals, and that's fine, but it was negative 2.5. And if you tried that up here, right, if you tried that in this, that's going to give you negative 1 as your answer. Again, pause it if you need to. This one over here, we talked about ways of solving this was to find the common denominator. Maybe I'll write this in gray or another color. Common denominator. And then remember we talked about, if you have a common denominator, you just have to worry about the top. And you can forget about the denominator. You can just not worry about the bottom at all. And so I look at 7 and 2 here, and I think, okay, 7 and 2, what's their common denominator? Well, it's 14. So I want to make this one have a denominator of 14, so that means timesing the top and bottom by 2. And this one, a common denominator of 14 means timesing the top and bottom by 7. Right? So if you can do that, sorry, let me just make that look more like a 2. Let me just zoom in on that. Looks like it's a little zoomed out there. Then you're going to get 2 times, right, the whole thing. So 2 times y plus 4. And then over here, you're going to get 7. And then both of them, obviously, like we said, are over 14. Now, what I do, and maybe I can make this a little bit thinner for you guys. Let's see if I can just get rid of those. Those 14s are a bit ugly, aren't they? Just make them look a little bit more legible. There you go. There you go. So we're just looking at then that the tops are the same. So that's why I wrote 2 times y is 2y, 2 times 4 is 8, 2y plus 8 equals 7, and I don't worry about the bottoms, right? If the bottoms are the same, that means their tops must be the same too, if they're equal. So we've just got 2y plus 8 equals 7, and then you just start moving things across, right? You got 2y, your 7 minus 8, 2y equals negative 1, and then y equals negative 1 over 2. Oopsies. Okay, we're at 840 here. Doing good. Any questions so far? Remember, if you missed something, you can go back. But we'll do this part here. And this is where a lot of us lost. Even if you did really well, no one got perfect on this question. So the x and y intercept method, right? That's when you find the x-intercept, right? When we looked at things in this form, when we first learned how to graph equations, we said the x and y intercept was when you find the x-intercept. And remember, that's when y is equal to 0. Oopsies, it's a highlighter. That's when y equals 0, and the y-intercept was when x equals 0. And you can see that I did that, right? X-intercept, if I'm looking at this equation, all I do is set y is equal to 0 here. So it'd be minus 7 times 0, and you can see that's what I did. So we're just left with 2x equals 14, and x should equal 7. So that was our x-intercept, and you can see out here on the x-axis, which I've labeled with an x, I have my dot at 7. Then my y-intercept is when x is 0, right? And so when x is 0, I go 2 times 0, boom, boom. So I get minus 7y equals 14. Divide both sides by minus 7, right? Because this basically is gone. It's just minus 7y equals 14. So I divide both sides by negative 7. I get negative 2, and that's what I get down here, right? You can see that down there. And that's good because that is also labeled with our y-axis, right? So I just connect my two dots. Some things that are important. I'm going to move that across. You can pause this if I went too fast through there. Some things that are important is that you labeled your x and y-axes, right? Then you've also labeled your axes with numbers so that we know what step it is. If you don't label what step your numbers is, I could think they're 5, 5, 5, or maybe this goes up by 10 as well. It's different possibly. I can't just assume what they are. You also should have put arrows on the end to let me know that it goes forever. If you didn't put arrows, it just makes me think that you don't think it does go forever and you think it stops. And you also, to cap it all off, should label it with an equation. So you've given it its name, you've named the axes, you put, even just if it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, you don't even have to type all the way up to 7 or write all the way up to 7 and connected them with your dots. You can see that I don't have my negative numbers on here because that implies that my scale at least is going up by 1. Okay, so remembering that. And I thought it was interesting, like when we look up at this checklist up here, right? I've labeled all equations and graphs and things like that, and a lot of people check that off, but then didn't actually do that. So make sure, you read this. This was not just a checklist for you guys to validate yourselves that you're awesome. This was a look at this, right? Where were we? Over here, now in this part B, it says rearrange this into that y equals mx plus b. So that was the new way we learned of graphing it. You actually notice it's the same equation, right? And technically these will be the same graphs. It's just a different way of drawing it. So let's see here. If I do this, right, I want to get y equals mx plus b, I want to basically get y. You should be getting y by itself. So to do that, I move my x across, so you get minus 2x. I then would go, okay, well, I've got this minus 7y equals minus 2x plus 14, right? This is a positive 14 here. I divide everything by negative 7, right? I would say we got to take this divided by negative 7, which cancels those out. That's why it's just y. This divided by negative 7, and this divided by negative 7. So negative 2 divided by negative 7, that makes a positive 2 over 7. You could leave it as a decimal, but remember we said keep slope in fractions or else, it just doesn't make sense when you graph it, right? It's rise over run, so up 2 over 7, up 2 over 7. And then 14 divided by negative 7 is negative 2. Then it says, right, what you should do is you should go ahead and graph that same line using your slope and your y-intercept. So tell me what the slope is. So from here it was 2 over 7. From the y-intercept it's minus 2, right? And then over here you've got your y-intercept of minus 2, and you start there, right? And then you go up 2 over 7. Hey, it's the exact same line, obviously. Making sure you've got your x, y's. Oh, and I should have put my label on here as well, shouldn't I have? I should have wrote y equals 2 over 7x minus 2. With your arrows on the end. Okay. These were the ones that we struggled with for sure. Sorry, I'll just go up here and you can pause this if you need to. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here, these were the ones that a lot of us struggled with, but we got the right idea. We figured out what we needed to do. So it's just we struggle with them, I think, because there are no numbers. So solve for V0 means get V0 by itself. Oops, I was hoping that I got that check mark in there as well. Right, so basically I want to just get this guy by itself like I do here, that thing equals something. So I need to get rid of this, right? This is a plus, right? We're adding something called AT. So how do I get rid of that? Well, it'll be nice to subtract AT, right? If we have one AT and we subtract another AT, we no longer have ATs. So all I'm doing is I'm subtracting AT from both sides. So we would have that V, subtract AT, and that will just leave us with our V0. And so that's why we did that. Moving on to the next one, I see that I want to get H by itself. I want to get H by itself. I'm just going to move this down as well, give myself a little more space to explain. So getting this H by itself is a bit trickier here because you notice there's no addition or subtraction, but you still need to follow solving and you need to follow SAMDEB. So what is happening here? Well, these two things here, what's happening with L, W, H? Well, they're all multiplied, right? So if I want to get H by itself, what's the opposite of multiplying? Opposite of multiplying is dividing. So basically we would just divide both sides by this LW, and you'll just be left with H. That'll be the only thing that's over there. Over here with this one's the trickiest one for sure, because we're trying to get V by itself, but V is on the bottom of a fraction, which is kind of strange. So how do we deal with this? Well, there's a couple steps you need to follow. That's why that's a 2-mark one. So let's just think about it. I'm going to move this down again. So I want to get V by itself, but I do know it's on the bottom, and I'm like, okay, well, I see that this is division. So what's the opposite of division? It'd be multiplication, right? So I'm going to multiply both sides by V. If I do that, I get D times V is equal to M. And now at least I can see, oh, V is on the top. I might be able to get V equals. I don't want like 1 over V or something ugly like that. I just want V to be equal to blah. So how do I get, right, okay, I switched the order of these. It doesn't really matter, right? But how do I get just V, right? Because I just want V by itself. So what I would do is, what is the opposite of multiplication here, right? This is D times V. So we're going to divide both sides by D. Divide by D. Divide by D. And that is going to give us, right, just V, because those D's cancel out, is equal to M divided by D. And that's what my final answer was right there. So that one was a bit of a weird 2-stepper. But again, if you follow the rules, then you shouldn't have a problem getting V by itself. Okay. These ones, again, were all about us justifying our answer, getting the right answer, and talking about why it was the right answer. So this one here was pretty straightforward because you just had 2 equations and they're both in y equals mx plus b. Right, they're both like that. So I look at my 2 slopes because that's what it means to be parallel or perpendicular. One is -1/2, right? One is +2. So that means that they are perpendicular because they are reciprocal right? Reciprocal means flip. It's not a very good way of spelling reciprocal. I think I forgot a C in there. Reciprocal. Oh, that's a highlighter. Rocal. And they also have opposite signs, right? Or one is positive and the other one is negative. So that's why that one is perpendicular. Then this one here, you might look at this and go, ooh, I know that whatever's beside the x means that's this. Well, it's not in y equals mx plus b, right? Yes, this is in y equals mx plus b. But this one is not. So you had to solve for y. And that's what I did over here, right? I bring the 9 across, the 9x, so it's minus 9x. Then I divide everything by 3. And you should, if you solve this one for y equals mx plus b, I noticed a lot of you did it here, which probably makes a lot more sense. So sorry that I didn't do that there. Basically, you just say, okay, I want to get y by itself. So that's 3y equals, right? Instead of positive 9, we're going to minus 9x equals, sorry, plus 18, not equals. Plus 18. Then divide everything by 3, so y equals negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3x, and 18 divided by 3 is 6. So what is our slopes? Well, I noticed that the one slope is negative 3 from our first equation, and looking at our second slope, it's also negative 3, so they are parallel because they have the same slope. So 1 mark for showing me how you figure that out. 1 mark for telling me why and explaining, and 1 mark for getting the right answer there. That first one you can see was only worth 2 because you didn't have to solve anything. Okay, so this next one, again, you might look at the first one. Oh, sorry. Whew. The first one there is already in y equals mx plus b form. The second one is not. It's in standard form. So we've got to turn it into y equals mx plus b form. So you can see, again, I would take my y, I'm trying to get it by itself. So this minus 3 comes across, it becomes positive 3x plus that 18 still. I'm going to divide everything by 9. 3 over 9, right, is the same thing as 1 over 3. But anyways, I'll leave another step for that. Plus 18 divided by 9 is 2. And if I reduce this, divide the top and bottom by 3 and 3, you're going to get y equals 1/3 x plus 2. Okay, so I see a slope of 1/3. I see a slope originally of negative 3. 1/3 and 3 are reciprocals, right? They're flipped. So they're reciprocals. You can see that here. And they also have the opposite sign, right? One is negative, one is positive, so that means that they are perpendicular. So I'll leave that there. You can pause it on that if you need to copy. If not, we'll move on. Again, I've done the same work in 2 places, here and here, here and here. So you don't have to do it in both places. I just, I saw most of you did it over here, so I thought that was smart. Okay, so here, basically it says write the equation that has a slope of 3, so that's m, and a y-intercept, so that's b of 4. So that's a pretty just easy knowledge-based one. So you should have y equals mx plus b, so 3 is the slope, and 4 is the y-intercept, so you get 3x plus 4. This one, it says write the equation for a horizontal line that passes through the point 3, negative 2. Well, if we're looking at the point 3, negative 2, you don't have to draw this out. I'll just do it quick here to give you guys an idea. This is your x and y axis. 3 is the x value, right? And negative 2 would be your y value. I should count at least. So it'd be somewhere right there. So how do you get a horizontal line? Well, remember, basically, if you want a horizontal line that goes through that point, the slope there, right? The slope for slope dude, think slope dude, is 0. So if I'm going to do y equals mx plus b, what's its b? Oh, it goes through negative 2. What's its m? It's 0. So I could write 0x, but really that's the same thing as y equals minus 2. And if you guys remember when we did that whole Desmos activity or that day, y equals were always horizontal lines. All right, this number 6 here, it says determine the equation of a line that passes through this point. It has a slope of 4. So it has a slope of 4. So I know if we write out y equals mx plus b, I know at the very least my m is 4, right? So I would know y equals 4x plus b. We just need the b value so that it goes through this point. So to get that, you put in your x is negative 1, right? So you can see I replaced x with negative 1 here, and your y with 3. And so you just solve for b, right? This is negative 4. I bring that across, it'd be plus 4, so 3 plus 4 is 7. So I got my b is 7, and I've written my equation there. All right, so number 7 was another one that a lot of us struggle with. I think number 6 was decently well done, but number 7 was universally not great. So I'll show you how we get number 7 done. Okay, so first thing is it says graph a second line, right? This is line 1. It's labeled on there, line 1. You don't even need the equation, but at least it is labeled. We want to graph a second line so that it goes through the point negative 10, 8. That was the most surprising thing to me at how few people actually graphed negative 10, 8 correctly. A lot of you switched your x and y. Negative 10, 8, right? That's x is negative 10. So here's x is negative 10 over here. And then 8, I go up, up, up. So this is that point that we're trying to get it to go through right there. That would be the point negative 10, 8, like this, right? That's the point we're looking at right there. So then what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the slope that is 3 times the slope of line 1. Well, that would tell me that I need to get the slope of line 1. So what is the slope of line 1? Well, you can start anywhere, but to me, and I think to all of you guys as well, you basically noticed it goes down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2, and it repeats that forever. So our slope of line 1 is negative 1 over 2. I've wrote that in a couple places now, I apologize. But you can clearly see that the slope is negative 1 over 2. So here's where we messed up. Many of you said, okay, if our original slope was negative 1 over 2, I know it has to be 3 times bigger. So I think that that means I have to go times 3 over 3. Well, if you did that, this is not timesing something by 3. That's timesing something by 3 divided by 3 is actually just 1. So many of you drew a line with the exact same slope because you decided that you needed to multiply it by not 3, but 3 over 3, which is 1. To multiply something by 3, you literally would just write times 3, and if you needed to think about multiplying by fractions, you write 3 over 1. So what is our actual slope? Well, it should be negative 1 times 3 is negative 3, and then 2 times 1 is 2. So you should have got a slope of this negative 3 over 2, not negative 3 over 6. And you would have noticed that if you graphed the same slope, if you did that 3 over 3 thing, did you notice that your slopes were the same? Well, that doesn't make sense, right? You said they had to be, you didn't say that. I said they had to be 3 times the slope of the other one. 3 times something is not the same, unless it's 0, right? That's the only case where 3 times that thing is the same. So 3 times the slope should have been a different slope, and that's why you maybe would have noticed that you had that error there. So what did I do? You don't have to write what I did over there, but basically, right, this is like 3 over 1 times that original slope, so negative 3 over 2. So then what I would do, and you guys could have done this differently than me, you know it needs to go through the point negative 10, 8, and we also know that our slope for this new line needs to be negative 3 over 2. So I would have zoomed in on the graph, and I would have gone, right, down 3 over 2. Down 3 over 2. Basically, and then you would link all of those up. See if I can get my ruler to go decently here. Awesome. And I would connect my line like this. with arrows on the end, and I could either label that as line 2, or I do know the actual equation because I know it's negative 3 over 2 x, and then our b would be the y-intercept, which I see is actually minus 7. So something like that. So I'll leave that right there. Feel free to pause that. I've got about 20 minutes left with only a few questions, so we should be able to get this done with my lengthy explanations. Sorry about that. Okay. So then for the multiple choice, oh yeah, actually we're like done. But for the multiple choice, which of these can't be an equation of a line? Well, we remember that x equals, right? Those are vertical lines. Y equals, those are horizontal lines. This thing here is in standard form. I'll just write it without a circle, that would be confusing. Standard form. So remember I said that we did a lesson on this. The only thing that is not a line would be when the degree is bigger than 1. If you graph 2x squared plus 7, that would look more like a happy face. It's called a parabola. So that's not a line because the degree, because it has that little exponent. We never had a line with that little exponent there. Number 2 was just from solving. So basically, right, we're trying to get y by itself. What I did is I brought that 3x across. It became minus 3x. And then you divide everything by negative 5. Negative 3 over negative 5 is positive 3 over 5. 45 divided by negative 5 is minus 9. So it had to have been a there. So that was number 2. Number 3. It says Janelle draws a line that passes through blah, blah. Janelle writes the equation. What are the values of M and B? Well, what I would do here, right, if you know 2 points, you can get your slope, and that's all based on the y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So I called this one, in my case, x2, y2, and x1, y1. And again, it doesn't matter which one you label as which, but you can see that I clearly have 6, so that y minus 3, so 6 minus 3 divided by this x, so minus 1 minus 0. That's a 0 there, sorry. Minus 0. So we get 6 minus 3 is 3, minus 1 minus, so just minus 1. So 3 divided by minus 1 is minus 3. So that means it can't be, like for our slope, right, that's our slope here. It can't be one that has a negative 9. That's not right. Our slope could be this one because this is minus 3. Again, it can't be negative 9, or it could be this one. But you want to find your b value. So how do I find my b value? Well, I would just look at my equation, and I'm just going to erase this so I can show you guys quickly. Right? We see y equals mx plus b. I have my slope that is negative 3. I have my y value and x value from any of these ones that I choose. You know, you might want to choose this one here because it's easier. I think I chose this one originally, but it doesn't matter what x and y. So here this x is 0. This y is 3. 3 plus b. Well, that would make 3 times 0 is 0. So b is equal to 3. Awesome, that must be this one here then, right? So our m was negative 3. I did that from my y2 minus y1s, and my b was 3. It's also when x is 0, right? So technically I didn't have to do any math. I could have just seen it right here. All right, number 4, it says, which of them is perpendicular here? Well, I know it's C because if we look at 3 here, I need to take the reciprocal. So flip it, 1/3, but I also need to change the sign, so it needs to be negative 1/3, and that's the only one with negative 1/3.
Number 5, the last one, it says, which of the following represents the graph of 2x minus 4y equals 8? So if we look at this then, basically what I would do, you could do this any way you wanted, but I chose to look at this and change it to y equals mx plus b. You could have put in random points, x and y, and see if it works, or just did the x-intercept, y-intercept method, whatever you wanted to do. But here's what I would do, right? I'm going to take my 2x, I'm going to bring that to the other side, so it's going to be minus 2x. So I keep the negative, sorry, I'll just erase that big circle here. I keep the minus 4y on this side. I had 2x, oh, sorry. Here's my original equation, I'll rewrite it. 2x minus 4y equals 8. So I'm going to take this 2x, I'm going to bring it to the other side, so it becomes minus 2x plus 8. Ooh, that's an ugly 8. Then I want to divide each term by minus 4. So I get rid of this minus 4, because that's multiplied, so we divide by minus 4. Then we divide this by minus 4, so negative 2 divided by negative 4 is positive 2 over 4, or positive 1/2. And I also know that 8 divided by negative 4 is negative 2. So my slope is positive 1/2, and my y-intercept is negative 2. So here, this has a y-intercept of negative 2, so does this. These ones have a y-intercept of positive 2, so I know it can't be these ones. So which one has a slope that is positive, puff, puff, positive? Well, it's going to be this one. The other way I know that is it goes up 1 over 2, right? Up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. So I know it's this part A here. So there's your multiple choice, and you could pause that there if you needed to. All right, so that's the quiz there. What I'm going to let you guys do is I'm going to give you the next 15 minutes to ask questions from me in Teams. So I'm going to be available on Teams. I'm going to end the stream now. I want you to go back and correct your work. And later today, I'm going to go back and look through your OneNotes to make sure that you did correct it. And if you did, I will give you a little bump and mark there for taking the time to correct that and making sure everything is A-OK. So you can rewatch this video almost immediately. I think it might take a minute to render or be replayable in a minute here, but you should be able to follow along in that way as well. So anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Yeah, I'll see you guys in class tomorrow. We're going to start our new unit tomorrow. So we'll move on from there. Awesome. No more lines. See you guys.